automobile industry, for instance, the sector has grown significantly. If you look at the amount of money that is being injected into the sector, you realize that we saw it. I mean, from the next 5 years, we've seen, for the last 5 years, we've seen about 25.7 billion rands injected in it, with commitments that are coming from Ford, commitments that are coming from VW, from Mercedes, from General Motors. So there's a lot of commitment moving to the future in terms of injecting more money in the automobile industry. So that's good news. And if you look at the amount of foreign direct investment that we were able to attract between January and July last year, you realize that the amount is significant, $3.31 billion that we injected between January and July, and creating more than 5,000 jobs. I think we are on a good trend. I wouldn't say it's that gloomy. However, we do need to do more in terms of keeping on attracting foreign direct investment. We're competing with the rest of the world to attract investors into the country.
All right, so that's on the economic front. We see there's some resilience there, but I just want to take a step back and just look at it generally speaking. 5 years ago, as a South African going into a foreign hotel somewhere, you walk up to reception, and most likely they would say, well, South African, Nelson Mandela, or the World Cup. It just seems that these days you'd get an in-it response saying Oscar Pistorius, or they would ask you how safe it is in South Africa. Is that significant?
Listen, if anyone says to me Oscar Pistorius, there's a positive part about that. That the justice system in this country works. And around the world, people are looking at fairness, how they're being treated. So the justice system is totally independent. It works very well. And people, individuals, they have the right to appeal to any system, and the system treats them very well. That's what people want to hear around the world, that would they be treated fairly if they were to come into the country and find themselves the opposite side of the law. So that's a good thing. I mean, if you look at even the Nation Branding Index, it's the WEF views in terms of our justice system. We're ranking very high, so we're doing very well.
Okay, are you speaking about WEF? You're in Davos next week. Traditionally, you take a big space there. What's your plan to sell the country there?
We really need to keep on conveying the message that South Africa is still open for business. We're looking at attracting more investment. There are a host of activities that we're going to undertake that will include a lot of ministers who will be conveying this message that it's possible still to do business in South Africa, that the environment for business in South Africa is very conducive for them, and that the system actually is very solid in the country. We are a country based on the rule of law. So there's not a free-for-all in this country. That's what people want to hear.
So that's a message you take to Davos. Let's talk about, a rather turbulent year last year, just based on perception, based on news flow and so forth. We had a turbulent end of the year as far as the debacle in some government circles are concerned. I want to find out from you, as someone who holds the medium on the brand value institutionally, do you walk up to some of these stakeholders and say, listen guys, this might be a bad move, this is not reflecting very well? How do you sort of partake in your outfit?
We do have, Devin, we do have an access to all institutions of the state to advise them in terms of holding the brand. And remember that the brand does not only depend on the governmental sector. There's a business sector. There's a non-governmental organization. So all those three pillars are very fundamental in terms of strengthening the brand. And our responsibility at Brand South Africa is to talk to all these stakeholders, these pillars that are holding the brand, to do their own share in terms of strengthening the brand.
It's all over the economics news bulletin at the moment. The rand is at levels that we haven't seen before. And I'm just thinking that's disappointing news on the one end. But can we translate that, especially if you look at tourist numbers, can we translate that to a positive story and actually build up the brand from the other side of the continuum?
Let me tell you, the benefits of the rand, we're not going to see it immediately. It's a long-term thing. Mind you, in the tourism sector, people buy their product a year or so in advance. So people who are starting to use their rent now to buy for their visits in the next year, you'll start to see a lot of movement of transactions now, but we're going to see the benefits in a year's time. And that's when the State South Africa will do evaluation and do an assessment in terms of how many people were we able to attract and how much did they spend. And at that time, you'll then be able to do a correct assessment of the impact of the rent. Of course, the fact that the rent it's been doing poorly lately, it's a serious concern to us because I mean, I was listening to the news this morning. There are predictions that even the inflation, which is fairly under control, we need to look at that very seriously because of the problem of the rent.
Okay, and I'm running out of time, but if I put one more question to you, if there's a priority list which we could showcase on behalf of this country to show what our real value is, what would be on top of that list?
We still need to strengthen this notion that we are a rainbow nation.
Yeah.
Events of the last few weeks, they've really done disservice to our brand as an intolerant. Remember, our brand as South Africa has been built around tolerance, the rainbow colors of our nation. We need to retain that and retain the advice that we're giving people in terms of the level of tolerance. And the events in the last few weeks, they've been very helpful to that. So we'd like to urge all South Africans to really treat this matter of our race relation with the seriousness it deserves. It's really something that is so fundamental. It's enshrined in our constitution, the level of tolerance. We need to articulate that quite clearly.
And I suppose that's the ownership that doesn't rely with any institution but South Africa
all of
as
us.
a whole. Kingsley Makhubela, BrandSA CEO, thanks very much indeed for coming in.
Thanks, Evan.